Have you or anyone you know completely changed themselves in any direction of their life?
I feel like, yeah, my cousin has like changed himself a lot. He went from being a really bad kid to getting his stuff together, to really starting to act straight.
I feel like once you get to high school, and especially as you go on, like into your junior and senior year, like a lot of people change, like you find your place.
There's a few people, like when you reach a certain point in your life, you just change, like they've changed like everything about them, like the way they dress and the way they talk.
I actually have a friend, he started like maxing out all his credit cards thinking it was okay. We put him into jail because that collector was calling him so much. And he ended up getting a job, putting himself right back on the track.
Yes, somebody I know has changed the direction of their life, a druggie who changed his life, and now he's going back to college, and he's going for a full scholarship for basketball to MSU.
I've changed my direction, and I started caring in who I trust and who I talk to and my family.
Recently, my friend, she was making some really bad decisions, and she turned herself around, and she's on a path to success, and she's doing really well.
Most of us had that aha moment when we realized the path we're traveling is at best not living true to ourselves, or at worst, perilous.
The moment of insight comes, and with it, the undeniable need to make a change.
Sometimes it's a big one, which requires a lot of courage.
Other times, small steps are required, and much patience to reach the goal.
More often than not, we need to rely on family, friends, and most especially on the grace of God to support us in this deliberate desire to change.
Deliberate change, a whole new you. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Abe.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is Real Faith TV.
Our spotlight guest today is Leah Darrow. Leah is a former contestant on the reality show America's Next Top Model.
Leah had the fame and the modeling career in New York, but she wasn't happy. She wasn't fulfilled.
She'll share with us her aha moment when she realized she was headed down the wrong path and needed to change direction and find her way back to God.
Let's meet her now as she tells us what her life was like before her deliberate change.
Everybody told me that if I was that girl, if I was that model, or if I had all that money, and if I had all those friends, and if I was popular, and if my picture was in Times Square, then I'd be happy. And I had all that. My picture was in Times Square, and it was on the subways in New York City, and on bus stops, and I had lots of money coming in, and these people that were supposedly my friends. And I came home crying most nights than not. It was after America's Next Top Model. I was still modeling in New York City. And I got a phone call from this international magazine. And they said, "We saw you on America's Next Top Model, and you're really cute. We think you have something more to offer. And since you got eliminated early on the show, you didn't get a chance to show the world all that you have to offer in the fashion industry, so how about we do a photo shoot and we show this really sultry, sexy side of you?" Here I am thinking, that's a great idea to promote me and be a better model, and I did the photo shoot, and the outfit that I was wearing was anything but modest. I remember them wheeling in this clothing rack with this itty-bitty clothing on it, and feeling really scared and nervous about it, and thinking, what am I supposed to do? I don't want to wear this. How do you stop doing something when you're already so far into it? And I just said, you're just nervous. You're just not a real professional model, and this is the time to be that. So put on the outfit and do it. And I started to do the photo shoot, and it was in that moment that I realized I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy. I ended up walking out of the photo shoot.
Wow, that's really like inspiring and admirable. If someone with all that like fortune and fame could walk out of a photo shoot like that, like that takes a lot of courage.
Something like that is like really nerve-wracking, and I mean, what people don't realize that, like these models sometimes they lose like respect for themselves. So that could be a psychologically damaging thing.
Yeah.
Let's see if our studio guests have ever made a conscious decision to make a deliberate change in their lives.
Okay, let's meet them. They are Justin, Jackie, Kalechi, Rachel, Steve, Leanne, and Matt.
Can you share a time when you made the decision to make a deliberate change in your life?
I really was judgmental of people. Like, I just see someone and I judge them automatically, not knowing them, not knowing what they were like, just on how they looked. And so my friend came up to me one day, she's like, Rachel, why are you judging them? You don't even know what kind of person they are. And I'm like, you know what? You're so right. I don't know what they believe or what they like to do. I just see the outfit they're wearing or the hairstyle they have, and I'm like, you know what? She's weird, or stuff like that. I really realized at that moment that I need to change that about myself. And it makes me feel better about myself that, like, she pointed that out, and it's something that I can improve upon.
Back in 6th grade, I used to be, like, I was a good student, but I was bad. And I remember people got picked to go on a retreat every after the year was over. So I was like, I want to go on that retreat. So I had to be good all the 7th grade year. So I tried to be good, and I was good, and I got picked. And that's how I started being a better person.
There was a point in my life where I started noticing that there was a person I would hang out with who was a bad influence on me. And I started to notice how that person would change my relationship with other people, how I would treat other friends sort of bad. So I started to, distance myself from that person, and I noticed how a lot of my relationships in my life got better.
When I was younger, I remember I used to get in a lot of fights, like at school. Like I didn't necessarily start them; they usually started with me. And I was usually a really angry kid. I used to see a lot of kids get picked on. It would just aggravate me, and my response to it was just to fight. I eventually transferred to a new school, and I kind of got sick of fighting all the time, being angry all the time, and I decided, I wanted to be more of a happy person. I didn't want to fight so much, and I just started to make a change in my life. I'm still working on it, but it's a work in progress.
Leah's conscience spoke to her at the photo shoot.
You might say that in that moment she had a spiritual awakening, an encounter with God.
This encounter prompted her to take the first step in a new direction, a deliberate change.
Next, Leah continues with her story and shares with us how she went about making these changes in her life.
There were some changes that I made that were definitely right away. Obviously, leaving New York, that was an immediate change. There were some other changes that were also more gradual. I realized that what I wore affected other people. Obviously affected me too, especially in that photo shoot when I was wearing very little and how it made me feel. I felt less of a person. And I've always loved fashion. It's a part of me. And that was a really big thing for me, was to decide exactly what's okay to wear and then what's probably not okay to wear. And that was really hard because there was some clothing that I couldn't even donate, because it was like, I don't want any other woman should not be wearing this outfit. I mean, I shouldn't be wearing it, nobody else should be wearing it. So there were some gradual changes like that with my clothing. I mean, sometimes I didn't want to deal with it all at one time. It wasn't this all at one-time deal. It's like anything else. It's like anybody who maybe decides to run a half marathon. You don't run 13 miles the first day of training. You just do a little bit at a time, and before you know it, you're running 13 miles. If there was anybody in the Bible that I could have the courage they had, it would probably be Mary Magdalene, which happens to be my confirmation saint, and the good thief. Mary Magdalene had the courage to come up to Christ during the time when he was having dinner, confess her sins, and ask for forgiveness in front of everybody. And he forgave her because she loved much. And then the good thief, because even while he hung on the cross, he had the courage to still look at Christ and say, remember me when you come into your kingdom. I hope I have that courage in life to stick it out even though I make mistakes and say, look, I'm a mess, but will you help me? Just having that courage to change, even with every mistake that I make and all the ones that I'll make tomorrow, just saying, oh God, help me be better.
I definitely admire Leah because it's very brave of her to turn down this opportunity to be a fashion model because of her own personal belief, and she uses God to get through that.
My one friend, she had a complete change in herself. She did all this bad stuff to herself and she just was not comfortable with what she was doing, and she decided to go to church one day, and after what the pastor told her, she went out and she just started doing all this good stuff in the world, and she feels so much better about herself.
Yeah, I know this one guy who, like in the 1960s, he was in a band with his best friend, and they got all caught up in like the drug culture and alcohol and just like everything they could get into. And like one night when he was doing drugs, he realized like he got really scared, and he said, you know what, I need to do something else in my life. Like I can't do this anymore. Like what if I don't wake up tomorrow? Like what if I overdose? And so he just like, he had never really talked to God, so he just started praying. And eventually he made like a deliberate change. He made a really tough choice. He left the band with his best friends. He said, you know what guys, I really love you, but I can't be a part of this anymore. Like this scene, it's just not good for me. So he broke away from that, and he grew closer to God, and he like went to church, and it really changed his life.
Well, my spiritual awakening was at my confirmation retreat. We were all in the church and there was music playing, and our parents wrote us a letter. As I read the letter, I like started crying a little. I felt that God was really with me, and it changed my feelings toward my parents. Like I always took them for, like you take your parents for granted. You don't really appreciate them like at all times, but I really was taken aback, and I really had a new attitude toward them, and I always said thank you for just the small things like driving you around town and stuff.
My spiritual awakening came when I had to write a letter to my parents at my graduation retreat. And it really showed me how underappreciative I was towards my parents and the sacrifice they made daily for me, whether it was a small thing or a large thing. It made me take on a more mature role in my life with my parents and helping them with the small and large things, and really brought me closer to God.
There's actually one reader of my church, and she was reading one day, and I realized the way she told the story, and I really thought, this is really a good story, and I got to thinking, maybe I should start paying attention more to what they're reading at church. And ever since then, I'm always able to find out how, wow, this really does relate to my life.
There was a period in my life where I was kind of searching for God or trying to identify Him. And I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I went through a series of dreams, you know. Some of them were kind of more crazy than others, but I kind of identify them as religious dreams. There are a few religious images in a few of them, and they were several months spread apart from each other. And you know, these dreams kind of pushed me a little bit more towards God. I started to think about Him more. It opened me a little more to the will of God. We must be open to the will of God in our life so we can identify His presence and guidance.
The Holy Spirit speaks to us in our hearts and can help us to transform ourselves into true disciples of Christ.
In Paul's letters to the Romans, we read,
"Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind,
that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect."
Let's go back to the teens on the street and find out if any of them have a spiritual awakening.
Let's check it out.
Have I ever had a spiritual awakening? I hope I do one day, but I haven't yet.
Not really.
No. I lead a youth group, Kenilworth, New Jersey, St. Teresa's Youth Ministry. They learn from my experiences and they'll make their own experience changes. So that's my change.
Once my uncle had passed, I figured out that I shouldn't let things hold on, because the more I held on stuff, the more I felt upset.
Definitely once I made my confirmation, that was a major change in my life. Going through all the retreats, I realized how much, faith is important to me, and I'm really glad that I have that in my life.